we're going to talk about conditionals and control flow in Java, of course. Okay, so it goes like this. Introduction to control flow. Imagine we're writing a program that enrolls students in courses. If a student has completed the prerequisites, then they can enroll in the course. Else, they need to take the prerequisite courses. They can't take Physics 2 without finishing Physics 1. We represent this kind of decision making in our program using conditional or control flow statements. Before this point, our code runs line by line from top down, but conditional statements allow us to be selective in which portion will run. Conditional statements check a Boolean condition and run a block of code depending on the condition. Curly braces mark the scope of a conditional block similar to a method or a class. Here's a complete conditional statement. We have the keyword if, and then in parentheses we put a Boolean value. In our case it's true. We will see in the future examples that this Boolean value will be replaced by an expression. What I mean by that is going to be an expression that compares two values, and the result of that expression is going to result into a Boolean value. And based on that Boolean value, code inside will be executed or not. But the overall picture is that we have the keyword if, in parentheses we're going to have a Boolean value, and then inside the curly braces we will have some code that we want to be run. If the condition is true, then the block is run. So in our case, hello world will be printed. But suppose the condition is different. If false, then system.out.print hello world. If the condition is false, then the block does not run. This code is also called the if-then statements. If condition is true, then do something. So if this condition is true, then do something. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, it says we have to click next to continue. Okay, the if-then statement. The if-then statement is the most simple control flow we can write. It tests an expression for truth and executes some code based on it. If flip equals 1, then system.out.println heads. If the if keyword marks the beginning of the conditional statement followed by parentheses. In our case, the if keyword and the parentheses. Whatever we place in the parentheses will have to evaluate to a Boolean expression. So it will be some sort of comparison that will evaluate to a Boolean result. The parentheses hold a Boolean data type. In our case, we have an expression here, which is going to check whether flip, whatever flip's value is, equals to 1. So this is an expression that will result into a Boolean type result. For the condition in parentheses, we can also use variables that reference a Boolean or comparisons that evaluate to a Boolean. In our case, we have a comparison that evaluates to a Boolean. The Boolean condition is followed by opening and closing curly braces that mark a block of code. If this block runs if and only if the Boolean is true. So we have here, we are declaring initializing a variable of type Boolean whose value is true, And then here we say if this, so if this variable whose value we know is true, so if this is true, then print this. Okay. Now, if we have a look here, we have an integer called number of items in cart, and it says equals 9. And then we say if number of items in cart is greater than 12, and this expression will evaluate to false, because 9 is not greater than 12. And then this one, this statement here, will never get to be printed on the screen, because the result of our block of code here is false. Okay, so the result of our expression in the parentheses evaluates to false. Therefore, this statement never gets to be printed. So if a conditional is brief, we can omit the curly braces entirely. So say, for example, here we could have omitted altogether the curly braces because it's brief, so it only consists of one other line of code. So if true, then print this. Now the code editor contains an order class to track retail shipments. Write an if-then statement that prints high value items. No, high value item when item cost is greater than 24. So we say if we need to compare here if the item cost is greater than 24, and then we have to print out high value item. Okay, so we have to say system.out.println, and we put this in double quotes to print that on the screen. And of course we get on the screen the result high value item printed on the screen, because we have our item cost is greater than 24, because item cost is 30.99, and this whole expression evaluates to true. Therefore, whatever code we have inside of this if statement, of this if block I should say, will get printed indeed. We're going to move on to the next lesson. If then else. So we've seen how to conditionally execute one block of code, but what if there are two possible blocks of code we'd like to execute? Let's say if a student has the required prerequisites, then they enroll in the selected course. Else, they're enrolled in the prerequisite course instead. So recreate an alternate conditional branch with an else keyword, as we see here in this example. So we've seen this one so far. We have the keyword if, and then we either pass it some sort of a value of type Boolean or an expression that evaluates to a value of type Boolean. And then if this is true, then we place within the curly brackets, we place some code that will get executed. Otherwise, we use the else keyword, which is placed on the same line with a closing curly bracket of the first one here. So we place it on the first line, and then we open a new set of curly braces, and inside there we put the code that we want to run in case this one evaluates to true, in case this one evaluates to true and this block of code does not get to be executed. So this conditional statement ensures exactly one code block will be run. If the condition has prerequisite is false, so if this condition is false, then the block after else runs. So this block will run if this is false. Okay. This code is also called an if-then-else statement. So if the condition is true, then do something. Else, do a different thing. So in our case, if this value is to false, it will jump straight here and execute the code that is here. Otherwise, if this value is true, it will execute whatever code it has inside here, inside this if block. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, it says in the code editor, there is an isFiled value, so this one, a variable, that represents whether the order is ready to ship. Write an if-then-else statement that when isFilled is true, so when this variable is true, it prints shipping. When this value or when this variable is false, it prints order not ready. We're going to use the keyword if, and inside here we have to check whether isFilled is true. And then we do a system.out.println, and we're gonna say shipping. We're gonna, since we want to print this text on the screen, we have to place this text in double quotes. And then if this variable is not true, and then we say else, and we open a new set of curly braces. I'm gonna copy the system.out.println again, and we say order not ready. So we have this whole block of if, else, then. Well, I should say if, then, else. And we have a variable, and we test if that variable is true. If it's true, we can print this one. If this variable, if this expression evaluates to false, we jump to the else block and we execute whatever is inside that else block. We say run, and of course we get order not ready because it goes here on line 9 and it checks this expression. So it checks the value of this expression. It evaluates this expression, and it says isFilled equals true. This one is going to evaluate to a single Boolean value, which is going to be either true or false. And we say isFilled. Okay, we know that its value is false. Is false, does false equal true? No, of course not. Therefore, this condition is false. And our code is going to jump here to line 12, and it will execute whatever is inside that block of code, which starts here on the opening curly brace, and it closes here on line 14 on the closing curly brace. We're going to go on to the next one. If, then, else, if. So the conditional structure we've learned can be chained together to check as many conditions as we like, as many conditions as are required by our program. So, for example, think about a very small program that might check what day is it. And say you need to learn Java on a Tuesday. And you can write a small program that checks each day, and then if the day is Tuesday, it will print the text on the screen saying it's Tuesday, therefore I'm learning Java, or something along those lines. Okay, imagine our program is now selecting the appropriate course for a student. We'll check their submission to find the correct course enrollment. The conditional statement now has multiple conditions that are evaluated from the top down. Now, here we have a variable of type string whose value is theater. We have a block of code that starts here at if, the if keyword, And inside we will have an expression that once evaluated, we get some sort of a data type Boolean. Okay, so this expression is going to evaluate to a Boolean result. And we have the dot equals method, which we know it compares to objects. And in our case, we have course, which is this variable. And because it's of type string, then it means this is an object. Yeah, therefore we need to use the dot equals method in order to compare these two objects. So we have the variable course dot equals, and in here we give it the value that we want our variable to be compared to. And we know that course equals to theater, and we say does course equal to biology? That will evaluate to false. And then if we have a look here, else if, so if this is going to evaluate to false, then go here and check another condition. Is my course algebra? If it is, then run this code. If it's not, then go to the next else if there's one. Okay, else if, check if my course equals to theater. Okay, in this case, this expression will evaluate to true, and it means that this, whatever we will have placed inside this block of code, will get executed. And then if none of these expressions evaluate to true, then it goes to the else. So we use the else keyword, and then it prints out course not found. Okay, the first condition to evaluate to true will have that code block run. Here's an example demonstrating the order. So if we have a test score of 72, we can check if the test score is greater or equal to 90, then print A. If the test score is greater or equal to 80, then print B. Else if, so it compares the value of this test score with different numbers until it finishes whatever it wanted to check. And then if none of these evaluate to true, so if this doesn't evaluate to true, if this doesn't evaluate to true, it jumps onto the else block and it executes whatever's inside there. This chained conditional statement has two conditions that evaluate to true, because test score is greater than or equal to 70 comes before test score greater than or equal to 60. Only the earlier code block is run. So in our case, if we have 72, it checks, is this greater or equal to 90? No, jump to this one. Is test score greater or equal to 80? No. Jump to here. Is test score greater or equal to 70? Is greater or equal to 70, 72. Therefore, we're going to print C, and then it jumps out. So once it finds a test that is true and that gets executed, then it jumps out of this conditional block, and it goes and prints whatever, or does whatever it was inside that conditional block. Okay. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, we need to calculate the shipping cost of our order. There's a new instance field, shipping, that we use to calculate the cost. Use a chained if then else to check for different values within the calculate shipping method. When the shipping instance field equals regular, the method should return 0. When the shipping instance field equals express, the method should return 175. else the method should return 0.50. Okay, so we have a class order. It has a few instance variables of type Boolean, double, and a string. And we need to use a if then else statement to check for different values within the calculate shipping method. So we need to go to calculate shipping method, which is here. And we need to do something. So we need to check if. So then if the shipping is regular, so if our shipping equals to, well, since these are objects, we have to use the equals method. Okay, so if it equals regular, then it should return 0. Okay, now else if the shipping equals express, then we need to return we need to return 175. And then the last one will be else return 0.5, okay, or 0.50. We're gonna run it, and it says the shipping cost is 175, because if we go to have a look at the main method, it says we have a book of type order, okay, and then we say new order, and this one takes a Boolean, filled, the cost, and the shipping method. So filled is true, the cost is $9.99, and the shipping method should be express. Okay. And then if we say book.ship, if we have a look at ship, and this is a void method that checks if it's filled, okay, and in our case it is filled, and it says if it's filled, then print shipping, and then print shipping cost, so shipping, okay, and then print shipping cost, which is this one, calculate shipping. So this value of 175 comes from running this calculate shipping, which decides for us what to print here. Okay, so if it's regular, return 0, so this would have been 0. If it's express, which is exactly what it is in our case, then print 175. Okay, and therefore we get here 175. We're going to move on to the next lesson, the switch statement. An alternative to chaining the if-then-else conditions together is to use the switch statement. This conditional will check a given value against any number of conditions and run the code block where there is a match. So here's an example of our course selection conditional as a switch statement instead. So we have a course, this is a variable of type string, and it holds the value history. And we use the keyword switch, which is a new keyword for us that we haven't seen so far, but definitely from now on we will see it. So we have the keyword switch, and then we give it some sort of a value. And it takes that value, and then it checks it against algebra, against biology, against history, against theater. Okay. But as you can see, we have also a new keyword introduced here, which is the keyword called case. Okay, so we've seen switch now and case. So in case, this is how I read it. In the case that our value passed here is algebra, then run this code and then break out. Okay, come out of this conditional check. Okay, now if the case, so if this value is biology, then run this code and then come out. If this case, so if whatever we have here is history, then run this. And then we see again another keyword, another new keyword, which is called a default. And then if there's none of these, so if the value that we're checking here that is on the same line with the switch keyword is none of these, so this value is not this, not this, not this, not this, then it jumps to the default method and it says course not found. This example enrolls the student in history class by checking the value contained in the parentheses course, which is this one, against each of the case labels. If the value after the case label matches the value within the parentheses, so if the value within the case label matches the value of what we have here in the parentheses, the switch block is run. So then whatever code is in there is going to be run. In the above example, course references the string history, which we see here, which matches the case history. So it matches this one. Therefore, so it goes here, no, it goes here, no, it goes here, no, then it gets to the case of, no, sorry, it goes to the case of history and it finds, yes, this is the same, therefore it will run this code, okay, whatever code we have placed here. When no value matches, the default block runs, so this one. Think of this as the else equivalent. Switch blocks are different than other code blocks because they are not marked by curly braces, and we use the break keyword to exit the switch statement. Without this break keyword, without the break keyword, the code below the matching case label is run, including the code under the case label, which is rarely the desired behavior. So one thing to understand is that if we are going to use the switch conditional, we should use always the break statement after each case, okay, after the code in each case. If we have a look at the instructions, it says we will rewrite the calculate shipping method so it uses a switch statement instead. There is an uninitialized variable shipping cost in calculate shipping. So in calculate shipping, we have an uninitialized variable shipping cost. So this one here. Assign the correct value to shipping cost using a switch statement. Okay, so we have to use switch. We have to give it some sort of a value here. So we have shipping cost. So we have to follow the same example here. So case, and then we give it the values needed. Okay, so we have to check the value of the instance field shipping. Okay, so when shipping matches regular, then the shipping cost should be 0. So if the case regular, we put we put semicolon, and we say the shipping cost equals to 0. Okay, and then we have to use the break. And I'm gonna copy this a few times, like so. Then if the shipping is express, we do the shipping cost 175. Then we do the default, so this will be the default. Shipping cost is 0, okay? And with this one, we don't need to put a break keyword. Okay, let's see how this goes. Okay, so does calculate shipping return a 0.50 when the shipping instance field is standard? Okay, so make sure the method returns shipping cost after the switch statement. Okay, return. It does return shipping cost. So I guess it wants us, instead of the default, it wants us to put a case, which is gonna be called standard. And let's run it again. Okay, the variable shipping cost might not have been initialized. Standard 0.50, let's see. So we need to check, so when the shipping matches regular, when it matches express, the default should assign, so this should be the default. Fault. This should be indeed $50. Okay, so we should not have anything here. Let's run it once more. So we have the regular, which is 0. Yeah. Now at least we don't have any more errors. So we have the case where the shipping would be regular, therefore the shipping cost will be 0. And then we break out of it. Then if the case is express, you say the shipping cost is 175 and you break out of it. And then this is the default, which says the shipping cost is 0.50. And this is done using the switch case conditional. Now let's have a look at the review. It says, before this lesson, our code executed from top to bottom, line by line. Conditional statements add branching paths to our program. We use conditionals to make decisions in the program so that the different inputs will produce different results. Conditionals have the general structure. If condition, so we have the if keyword and then followed by a condition. And then if this condition is true, it runs this. If not, it jumps to the else and then it runs whatever is in the else block. Specific conditional statements have the following behavior. If then, so the code block runs if the condition is true. If then else, one block runs if the condition is true. Another block runs if the condition is false. If then else chained, same as the if-then, but with an arbitrary number of conditions. And then the switch is the last one we've seen now, which a switch block runs if the condition value matches case value. If we have a look at the instructions, it says our complete order program is in the text editor, but the main method is empty. Create a different order instance and see if you can run the code in all the different conditional blocks. So we have to try to create an instance of our class order. So we need to create a new object. Okay, so we have we have order actually. The name of our class is order. My order equals to new order. And then let's see how the constructor was defined, so then we know how to call it. So this is the constructor, and we have to give it a boolean, a double, and a string. So a double for the cost and a string for the shipping method. So a boolean, let's say true, a cost $7.99, and then the shipping method, let's say, what is our shipping method options? Let's say regular. Okay, and then we're gonna say regular, and then if we check the shipping, for example, so my order dot shipping, but we have to print this one out. Oh, wait a second. Now let's leave this for now. Let's run this. Okay, so true. Well, I've made an error here because they simply need to be separated by a comma. Oops, did I press? I think I pressed the back button. Okay, let's press run and see whether this goes. Yes, so it works. Low value item. Let's say $15.99. And then let's say my order dot shipping. Let's see if this is gonna run, even though, yeah, we have to sys out this one. So system dot out dot print ln. Okay, let's try $49.99. This is a high value item. And if we say bill amount as well, let's check how much does the actual customer need to pay. Bill amount $49.99 because the shipping is regular and the shipping cost is 0. But let's say we're gonna have a high value item and we want to ship it express. So the value, let's put 50 here just to be a bit more straightforward. So if our item is express, then the shipping cost should be $175. But let's call, well, the bill amount, because this is the actual price of the item. But let's say if we want to calculate the actual shipping, so let's do this. Bill amount, calculate shipping. Okay. And we know that the shipping should be 150 in our case and 175 because we've chosen express. Okay. and we have 50, which is the bill amount, which is the price of the actual book, and we know that the shipping will be 175. Because we've chosen the express. Okay, I think this might be a little bit of a well, it's a good example anyways to practice this. So this is the final exercise. This is the final code that we had to complete for this lesson, the conditionals and control flow, the first part of it.